New Scotland Yard, synonymous with excellence in crime solving, recognised as a world leader in murder investigation. Every year, New Scotland Yard's experienced detectives unravel the twisted truth from the tragedies that unfold across the bustling capital city of London. Uncovering evidence that nails the guilty beyond all reasonable doubt takes time, dedication and a forensic attention to detail. This is New Scotland Yard Files. Tonight, a car found ablaze.
Arson offences occur to destroy forensic evidence.
With a body in the boot.
That shook us completely. We didn't know what was going on.
Burned beyond belief. Unidentifiable.
The burning of the body almost always speaks of an intense rage.
To find who's responsible for this terrifying murder, New Scotland Yard detectives will have to work fast. And their investigation will take them to some of the darkest places of the human soul. Around 2 a.m. on Saturday, 26th of February, a police patrol car came across a burning Mercedes down a secluded lane. Former DCI Damien Allain is leading the investigation.
You arrive at a crime scene and there's a burnt-out car. The question arises, well, what's happened?
It's here in Angerstein Lane that the blazing car is discovered. When firefighters extinguish the flames and police search the vehicle, a grisly discovery is made.
Detectives have launched a murder investigation after a man's body was found in a burnt-out car in Blackheath. The man was found in the boot of the car after firefighters extinguished the blaze. A post-mortem's due to be carried out.
If you find the body of an individual, a human being in the boot of a car in those circumstances, it's quite horrific in terms of, well, OK, there's clearly been an element of intent here. Somebody's been bound up, immobilised, and the car's been set alight, so there's a fair amount of intent. Of course, the question in your own mind is, well, was the body murdered there? Were they murdered somewhere else? Is this a deposition site?
With no eyewitnesses, police are faced with a huge challenge. But a murder of this nature does offer some early clues.
When a murderer burns a body, it's a very over-the-top modus operandi. What we are always looking for is somebody who has been harbouring an intense anger towards the victim.
One of the reasons why arson offences occur or fire-setting offences occur is often to destroy forensic evidence.
The body was in a very bad state. It was heavily charred, and it was impossible to make a physical identification. So what we had to do was to use forensic evidence to make a formal identification.
With the body sent off to forensics and police scouring the crime scene for other clues, detectives trace who the burned-out Mercedes belongs to.
So the initial investigations, or the fast-track inquiries were whose car is that? What are the circumstances of that vehicle? Why is it there with a body in it?
3 hours after discovering the car, officers arrive at the address of the Singh family in Bexleyheath, 7.5 miles from the crime scene.
Police came 5 o'clock in the morning and they knocked the door. I opened the door and I'm scared. What happened?
And they said that they found a vehicle, and at that time it was 5 in the morning. We was confused about what was happening, and I couldn't put it all together that it was my car that was there. And then they slowly said the car was burnt.
The blue Mercedes was being driven that night by Amandip's brother, 21-year-old Gagandip Singh.
Gagandip said he had a friend's party to attend. Gagandip took my car that day.
With Gagandip unaccounted for and a body discovered in the boot of the smouldering car he was driving, police immediately find out as much as they can in order to build a profile of him. A millionaire businessman in his early 20s and a well-known figure in the Sikh community, Gagandip had recently launched his own TV station, CCTV.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience for most people, and everyone's trying to soak in as much as they can and take back with them.
His family launch a social media campaign to find out if anyone knows of his whereabouts.
The morning that we couldn't find Gagandip, I contacted all of Gagandip's friends, and then his friends suggested, why don't we do a Facebook, sort of make a picture, a poster, and then post it everywhere and see what information we can get. So me and his friends got together and designed this sort of poster and posted it around in hope that someone will tell us where he is.
For Gagandip's family, it's a hugely anxious time, especially when information about the family's history comes to light. Just 18 months earlier, in September 2009, Gagandip's father Charanjit had been murdered on a visit to India. A businessman who had set up a successful employment agency, he was shot and killed in a suspected contract killing, an event that had a profound impact on Gagandip.
First 6 months after his dad's death, he not coping well. But after 6 months, he be a man of the house.
I mean, before my dad passed away, me and my brother were just kids. We didn't know anything, what was going on, how the family was run, how the household was running. But after my dad's death, my brother had to grow up very quickly. We were close. We got closer after my dad's death.
As they look for possible motives to explain Gagandip's disappearance, police ask themselves, could it be connected to his father's murder?
As soon as we found out that he was missing, that was the first sort of thing that we thought about, because that is what you would think. My dad was killed, and we thought, has the person that was behind that, have they harmed Gagandip or have they kidnapped him? It was more about, are they demanding money? Because we had death threats in the past about my brother, that he would be killed.
Police are investigating whether Gagandip's disappearance is in some way connected to the murder of his father, who was killed in a suspected contract hit in India just 18 months previously. One theory is that Gagandip had himself been kidnapped for financial gain. But then new evidence emerges that could offer yet another explanation for his absence.
As a senior investigator, one of my key responsibilities is to visit the scene, to try and interpret that scene, but also to walk around the environment, look around, look up, look everywhere. But what we were able to do was to secure some CCTV just at the end of Angusteen Lane. It was very grainy, absolutely not sufficient for any sort of formal identification of anybody because it was so far away. But on first glance, it looked as though there were two suspects and that one of the suspects was wearing a turban.
The image has some significant implications.
So the CCTV footage showing the two men, one with a turban, running away from the burning car, opens up two very different possibilities. It opens up the possibility that either we have the two murderers of Gagandip, or we have Gagandip himself with the turban, Gagandip as a murderer rather than the victim.
At that point, we were wishing that he's the one that's done something. It kind of turned to that where we wish that he's killed someone, or someone's done something and plotted against him, and it's not him in the boot. That's what we were hoping for.
With Gagandip's family clutching at the possibility that he is still alive, questions remain about the identity of the body found in the boot of Gagandip's burnt-out car.
The police came round and took Gagandip's toothbrush and hair from his bed and his comb. So they took that and then they matched I think from the toothbrush to his teeth, and they did a DNA.
At 9 p.m. on Saturday the 26th of February 2011, 19 hours after discovering the burning wreckage of Gagandip's car, the news comes in that forensics have a match, and detectives make arrangements to reveal the identity to the family.
The police thought it would be a good idea to send my mum to the hospital and break the news there, so paramedics and everyone would be around her because she's a heart patient.
Police confirm to Amandip that the charred body found in the boot of the burnt-out car is that of her brother, Gagandip Singh. Amandip then has the heartbreaking task of telling their mother that her son is dead.
At that point, I was just thinking, I don't know how I'm going to go and tell her. But we had to go inside, and I had to tell her that it's true, it's him.
I have very bad pain in my heart. I don't know why God saved me that time. I want to die with my son.
Despite their immense grief, the family take the brave decision to see Gagandip one last time.
We kept asking to go and see the body, so I went first. I went alone. I was thinking I was going to walk in to see a skeleton.
This skin is peeled. Under this skin, I can see his flesh, or one eye is like gone inside. I see only the face. The body is covered.
But the tragedy of this is that his own father had been murdered, I think it was a year or two previously to this incident happening. What are the chances of, father and son being murdered in close order in completely different circumstances?
With Gagandip confirmed as the murder victim, police turn their attention to piecing together his movements on the night he died. They scour automatic number plate recognition cameras used to identify individual vehicles on the roads to see if the Mercedes he was driving shows up.
We were able to obviously determine from the automatic number plate recognition system the route of the vehicle that night. So it had gone from southeast London around the M25 down the M23.
Detectives want to know why Gagandip headed to Brighton on the night he went missing. Information uncovered by his sister Amandip when she first learned of her brother's disappearance could help join the dots.
I called one of Gagandip's friends and I said, do you know where he is? He's not come home. The police are here. What do you know where he's gone? Has he told you anything? And that friend said to me, he went to see Mundil in Brighton.
Mundil Mahil is a 19-year-old medical student living in Brighton. She and Gagandip had met through a friend, Harinder Shoka, a few years earlier when Gagandip was still grieving his father's murder, and they struck up a relationship.
At the time that Mundil came into Gagandip's life, he was probably still in the stages of bereavement, possibly looking for an escape, and may have formed a relationship with somebody that in normal circumstances, when he wasn't experiencing such feelings, he may not have formed a relationship with.
It was pretty easy to understand that it was more than friendship. She obviously made him feel like that because of whatever signs she was giving him. He had nicknames for her, sort of cute nicknames, and she was letting him call him that. So there was something there.
She was bright, intelligent, good-looking girl. She was studying medicine at Brighton University, with aspirations clearly to join a caring profession and become a doctor. Very competitive to get into medical school, and she was living with about 5 other students at some student digs in Brighton, in Gladstone Place. But
Gagandip's family were uneasy about the burgeoning romance and had reservations about Mundil Mahil.
Mum didn't like the girl at all. In our community, girls are not meant to be out late at night. They shouldn't be going to boys' houses, and Mundil was doing all of that. So my mum had a very strong feeling that she was not the right type. She was not suitable to be around Gagandip.
I said, Gagan, this is not right to go with one girl. And he said, okay, mom, but I not done anything wrong. I said, all right, but I don't like this girl.
Coming from a Sikh background myself, I know that all mothers are very protective of their sons. But what would be the reason why instinctively Gagandip's mother didn't like Mundal? Was it her wondering about her motivation for wanting to have a relationship with her son? Not liking something about her background or the way she spoke?
Which would all explain why Gagandip didn't tell his mother and sister he was going to see her. New Scotland Yard detectives look closer at the journey Gagandip took for evidence that he was going to see Mundhil Mahil.
In terms of physically tracing that route, officers were deployed to try and retrieve any physical evidence of that vehicle to support the ANPR, which is why we sought the CCTV from the service station.
On his journey down to Brighton, Gagandip stops at the Clackett services on the M25.
He had romantic intentions for Mundhil. He stopped at the service station on the M25 and bought her a gift, a cuddly toy.
Having bought her the soft toy, Gagandip's car is found on CCTV at Mundhil's flat in Gladstone Place at 9:45 that evening. But detectives become extremely suspicious when they learn of a telephone conversation Gagandip's sister had with Mundhil shortly after he disappeared.
I phoned Mundhil. I said, where's Gagandip? He's not been home. Did he come to you? And she said, I don't know, he didn't come to me. And I said, well, his friend has just told me that he was with you last night. And she switched the story straight away and said, oh yeah, he came, but he didn't come inside. I told the police exactly what Mundhil said to me. Things was not adding up.
Detectives have proof that Gagandip visited Mundhil on the night he died. Now they need to know why she changed her story.
So now we were firmly focusing at Gladstone Place, which is where Mundhil had lived, with other students, other medical students. So we deployed officers down to that address. Mundhil by now was nowhere to be seen.
The police became aware of the fact that that Gagandip had been tied up and became aware that he was a victim of an assault.
A major figure in the Sikh community, his funeral is attended by hundreds of people.
Gagan's funeral is very good send-off. I know that Gagan is not going for his wedding day. So I done his funeral like his wedding. I done everything for him. What I want to do for his wedding.
When he was brought in and out of the house, the temple, going to the crematorium, we had rose petals in the way like it was a king was sort of going past. So we wanted him to have the best send-off.
Detectives leading the investigation are working on the theory that on the night he died, Gagandip Singh drove to Brighton to see Mundhil Mahil, a 19-year-old medical student he was romantically linked with. But when they go to her flat in Gladstone Place to question her, Mundhil is nowhere to be seen. Detectives go door to door appealing to witnesses and get some revealing results.
A neighbour told us that they'd seen something suspicious with two males carrying out a bulky object and placing it in the boot of a Mercedes, and such was their suspicion from the outset, they recorded the registration number of the car.
Police quickly confirm it's the car that Gagandip was driving. Mundhil's nowhere to be seen, but her housemates are at home, and New Scotland Yard detectives elicit some key information from them.
So the address itself was a terraced Victorian townhouse, which was separated into individual student digs, effectively. So there were about 6 or 7 students residing at that address in different rooms, and it became very clear that there'd been a struggle in the area near to or inside Mundell's bedroom area. So it was from the flatmates that we became aware of the two male suspects who had visited her address that night. We were also able to determine that Mundell had collected these two males from Brighton railway station.
Police now focus their efforts on the station to see if Mundhil Mahil shows up on any of the surveillance cameras.
The footage depicts Mundell arriving in her car. She gets out of the car. She meets two males coming off the platform at the railway station.
A CCTV image from that night shows Mundhil collecting two men from the train. One is Gagandip's best friend, Harinder Shoka. The other, an old school friend of Shoka's, Darren Peters. Police scrutinise the relationship between Gagandip and his 19-year-old best friend, Harinder Shoka. Could he be connected to Gagandip's disappearance?
So this footage at the station not only makes the link between Mundell and Shoka and Peters, putting them all together, but it also shows them laughing, giggling.
The reaction about Harinder Shoka being involved, it came as a big shock. Harinder was at our house, or Gagandip was at his house. That's literally all they did. They were at each other's houses, having pizza, playing games, watching football. That's what they did. It was a very strong relationship that they had together, and Gagandip was acting as the elder brother.
Gagandip tried to help him all the time, like money-wise, job-wise. He give him a car. He always come to our house, and I made dinner for him.
But while Gagandip and Shoka may have been inseparable, they were also very different to one another.
They weren't really moving in the same social circles. Shoka is a regular guy who's leading a fairly ordinary existence. He's an apprentice electrician. And yet, in direct contrast, we have Gagandip, who's the leader of his family business, who's a boy destined for a great future.
Mundhil Mahil had met Shoka years earlier at a Sikh martial arts event, and he had quickly become obsessed with her.
The dynamic in the relationship between Mundhil and Shoka seems to be one where she's very much in control. She's getting here from Shoka the attention, the adoration that she seeks. Shoka seems to be infatuated, obsessed with Mundhil, and feels possibly that he's a bit out of his league, and is desperate to please her. My sense of Mundhil is that infatuation wasn't reciprocated.
I think she viewed Shoka as somebody that would go to the ends of the earth and back for her. She knew that he was besotted with her. I think at one stage she described him as one of her gangster friends.
When Gagandip arrives on the scene and becomes close to Mundhil, Shoka is envious. The relationship rapidly sours between the former best friends.
It became clear that now, that although they were once very good friends, that there'd been a breakdown in their relationship, and I think there was an element of clear jealousy from Shoka. And perhaps he thought, well, if I can get him out of the way, then, I can now pursue my romantic intentions with Mundhil myself.
Given this history, when they see Harinder Shoka and Mundhil Mahil together, police are immediately suspicious. This is compounded when they learn of a telephone conversation Gagandip's sister Amandip had with Harinder Shoka when she was trying to trace her brother's whereabouts.
I contacted all of Gagandip's friends, including Harinder, and that's where I found out that there's something not right. All I was asking is, have you seen him? Do you know where he is? And he giggled and said, why would I know? I told the police straight away that something doesn't seem to be right, because why is he giggling? So he must know more information.
There's no way to make sense of that giggle other than for it to throw suspicion on Shoka.
Detectives move in on Shoka.
The first person we arrested was Shoka. He was arrested at his home address. He was taken to a police station in southeast London, and he exercised his qualified right to make no comment to all our questions that we put to him at that point.
Police also bring in the other man seen in the CCTV from Brighton railway station, Darren Peters, Shoka's old school friend. And they find potential evidence linking him to the burnt-out car.
So when we arrested Peters, we found some petrol cans at his home address, which we believe were linked to the starting of the fire.
But the whereabouts of the third suspect, Mundhil Mahil, are still unknown.
So by now, Mundhil was clearly a suspect for this offence, and we were actively seeking her whereabouts, and I think she knew that. I think she was trying to buy time.
But with the police looking everywhere for her, there's a huge surprise for detectives when she comes to them.
She contacted us and suggested that perhaps we might want to speak to her because she'd seen some footage on the television.
Police say they want to speak to anyone who may have seen the car, a blue Mercedes C-Class.
And she was worried that that vehicle belonged to Gagandip.
Mundhil Mahil is arrested by police on the spot, but she remains cool under questioning.
When she was first arrested, she was very calm, she was very measured. She was very clear about what had happened, and that was that Gagandip had gone down there was no confrontation of any description, none whatsoever, and that he'd left of his own volition after that, safe and well. No suggestion of a violent struggle, certainly no suggestion of him being semi-unconscious and being carried out of that address.
But from the inquiries police had already made, they knew that Mundhil's story didn't match what they'd been told. Her housemates reported noises of a struggle coming from her flat. Her neighbour saw two men carrying a bulky object from her front door to the boot of Gagandip's car on the night he disappeared. And CCTV from Brighton railway station connects Mundhil Mahil with Shoka and Peters. Detectives are convinced that all three were complicit in an attack that saw Gagandip Singh bundled into the boot of his car, which was then driven to Blackheath and set on fire. But as detectives are searching for a motive, Mundhil makes a startling allegation against Gagandip over an incident exactly 6 months previously.
She had let him stay over in the past. Mundhil introduced a suggestion that he tried to get into bed with her. It wasn't clear, and we were never able to determine whether it was a formal attempted rape or was it just an initial approach, or whether it had occurred at all. There was certainly no formal allegation that was made. And, to some extent, if that did happen, I can understand why she wouldn't come forward and formally report it, especially given that she was from a Sikh community. And the issues, the cultural issues that are attached to that type of thing happening.
But I think what's of interest is the fact that she was could be seen as a liberated young woman who was living in the UK. And so is the religion or the culture being used as some sort of cover for why she says she didn't go forward by reporting this crime?
Whatever happened that night, Gagandip was sorry for it. It was just him getting closer to her. He was genuinely sorry for maybe thinking that she wanted to go a step further, and he was sorry about that.
Whether or not Gagandip crossed the line, the relationship between him and Mundhil changed.
She very much wanted to call everything off and put the relationship firmly on a friends-only basis. He had been badgering her with texts, but then more latterly they'd sort of broken off contact altogether.
Respecting her wishes, Gagandip refrains from getting in touch with Mundhil after that. So it comes as a great surprise when 6 months later she reaches out to him.
So when this text came out of the blue that inviting him down, it was a surprise to some extent. And I think he did have some concerns about what might happen down there. Yeah, so there was one key text that from Gagandip to Mundhill to say, you know, can we be civil with each other, or do you want me dead?
Detectives investigating the murder of Gagandip Singh, who was found in the boot of his burnt-out car in February 2011, have arrested 3 suspects, but they're still not sure what the motive is. They know that on that night, he drove to the Brighton flat of Mundhill Mahil, a woman he'd been romantically linked with. Under questioning, she claimed he previously tried to sexually assault her. After speaking to her housemates, police discovered that Mundhill harboured great animosity towards Gagandip.
And it was from some of those statements that we established that at some point Mundhill had actually suggested that she was going to kill Gagandip. People fall out and people say, I'm going to kill somebody, but, you know, rarely do they carry it out, thankfully.
At this point during the interview, Mundhill changes her story. She admits to police that she'd turned to Harinder Shoka to teach Gagandip a lesson.
She'd been involved in this plot to coax him down to Brighton in what she describes as, you know, he was going to get a good talking to.
Investigators are suspicious of Mundhill's version of events. They search for evidence to establish just how much she was involved in the orchestration of the attack, which they find in the form of text messages.
There was almost simultaneous contact between Mundhill and the victim and Mundhill and Shoka, to the extent that she was contacting Gagandip to sort of monitor his progress down to Brighton. She in turn was then relaying the information to Shoka, so he could obviously understand that Gagandip is on his way down now.
Detectives have conclusive proof that Mundhill was luring Gagandip into a trap set by his former best friend, Harinder Shoka.
My own view about Shoka, I think he was besotted with Mundhill. I think he probably would have done anything for her, and this was perhaps the extreme example of what lengths he would go to gain her affection. And I think of anyone that she knew, he was the natural choice.
Detectives deduce that the other suspect, Darren Peters, a school friend of Shoka's, played the role of the hired muscle.
So Darren Peters was perhaps less intelligent than anyone involved in this. He was somebody that Shoka had recruited to assist him.
Finally, detectives build a clear picture of what really happened in the murder of Gagandip Singh. Months after he ceased contact with Mundhill, following the alleged sexual assault, he's surprised to receive a text from her on Friday, the 25th of February 2011.
Mundhill had been in a dispute with Gagandip. There'd been some degree of animosity, and it became very clear that she had asked him to come down to the address in Brighton that night.
Police trace his car there, and CCTV captures him buying her presents en route. Surveillance cameras at Brighton Station also reveal Mundhill Mahil collecting Shoka and Peters before taking them back to her flat to lie in wait for Gagandip.
When we secured that footage, that became a landmark moment in the investigation, because now we've got physical evidence of the 3 of them together. And when you look at the footage, it seems that they're in quite a jovial mood, which I think is quite chilling in terms of what was later to unfold.
Gagandip arrives at the flat in Gladstone Place, unaware he's heading into a trap.
Gagandip had suffered extreme blunt trauma to the head, serious swelling of the brain. We were later to establish that Shoka himself had broken his hand during the assault.
A neighbour sees Shoka and Peters carry out a bulky object that is, in fact, an unconscious Gagandip wrapped in a duvet. They bind him with flex that they find in the boot of his car and dump him in there. Just after midnight, ANPR cameras spot them driving Gagandip's car back to Angerstein Lane, a secluded spot in Blackheath, southeast London.
I think by now they've panicked, they've realised that he's dead, and they needed to frustrate attempts to obtain any forensic evidence, and the best way of doing that was to set light to the car.
After dousing the car and the body in petrol and setting it ablaze, Shoker makes a phone call to Mundhill in a sick, romantic gesture.
We were able to establish that Shoker had been in a conversation on the telephone at the time that the fire was set for 80 minutes. And it later transpired that Shoker had told Mundhill that he was prepared to go to prison for 21 years over what had happened.
But there is one further shock in this tragic event. When they set the car on fire, Gagandip wasn't dead.
What we later established from the results of post-mortem was that there were soot deposits in Gagandip's windpipe and his lungs that would have indicated actually at that point he was still alive when that fire was set. And it must have been, an horrific way to die in those circumstances.
If they didn't set the car alight, he would have been alive. We just wish they had left him. They had done what they did in Brighton. If they had left him, he would still be with us.
On the 6th of December 2011, the trial of Mundhill Mahil, Harvinder Shoker and Darren Peters begins at the Old Bailey.
Me and my mum went to the trial every single day. We had to be there because Mundhill had her family there, Harinder had his, but we felt as a family that we need to stand there on behalf of Gagandip.
In an emotional trial, the true savagery of the attack on Gagandip is laid bare.
They said to me, if you cry in the court in front of a jury, judge refuse you come back in the courtroom. And how can you not cry when they explain how many they hit in Gagandip's head and his eye and broken leg and arm? How can you not cry?
With Shoker and Peters in the frame for the brutal violence, Mundhill Mahil's defence is that she didn't expect events to get so out of hand and wasn't as involved in the murder as the other two.
She sort of acted like she was very innocent and sort of the medical student that would never do anything wrong. So that's the sort of character that she tried to put across. I think she was more trying to get sympathy from everyone. But at the same time, everyone can see how she manipulated the two, Harinder and Gagandip.
The judge in the case described her as manipulative and deceitful. And the fact that she allowed, when Gagandip was being assaulted in her home, that she allowed the assault to carry on, when her intervention alone would have prevented this murder taking place, shows possibly a level of callousness around the crime that had occurred against Gagandip.
The trial lasts 4 months, with all the defendants pleading not guilty to murder. After considering all the evidence, the jury returns with their verdicts. Harinder Shoker is found guilty of murder and sentenced to 22 years.
With Harinder's sentence, there was a slight bit of satisfaction that he's got enough to ruin his life. He said to Mundhill on the phone the night he killed Gagandip that, Mundhill, I would do 21 years for you. And the judge said, well, I'm giving you 22. So that there was a bit of satisfaction in that.
Darren Peters, the so-called hired help, gets 12 years for manslaughter for his part in the killing. And Mundhill Mahil, she pleads guilty to the lesser charge of grievous bodily harm with intent, which the jury accepts. She is sentenced to 6 years and serves only 3.
she claimed she had gone to police voluntarily to assist them with their investigation. In fact, under cross-examination, she was forced to admit that she had lied to police, suggesting that all she had done was to lure him to what she explained to be a few slaps and a lecture. Her actions were calculating, and that she was at the heart of a criminal conspiracy with Shoker and Peters of tricking Gagandip to Brighton to seriously assault him, which ultimately resulted in his death.
The irony about all this is that had it not been for Mundell Marhill, Gagandip would never have been murdered, and here she is being convicted of a lesser charge.
And that's something that I just can't get my head around. How she can live day in, day out knowing that she's destroyed our family and she's got a perfectly happy life.
In 2016, Mundell Marhill married Labour mayoral candidate Gagandip Singh Bowler and was on her way to becoming a mayoress until Gagandip's sister intervened.
No way can someone like her be at such a position with what she's done. A mayoress is meant to be someone that goes with the mayor and sort of works with the local communities and sort of helps them do good things. But someone like her, who has destroyed a family, you know, something that can never be fixed again, no way would she be allowed to be at a position like that. And I did do petitions and I did contact whoever I could and I did what I could to make him step down. And he did.
In a statement, Councillor Singh Bowler says, "Resigning from the mayoralty was a decision I made without compulsion. My wife Mundell had no desire to be called mayoress. Since her release, Mundell has dedicated her time to supporting prisoners and victims of sexual assault, and I admire her for doing that. What matters to me right now is the welfare of my family."
The murder of Gagandip Singh was savage and brutal. A crime that plays on our darkest fears, for the victim was burned alive, locked inside the boot of his own car. Was it emotional signals that got crossed, or simply a twisted love triangle that became a honey trap with fatal consequences? For Gagandip's grieving family, the response was swift. Within 3 days, police had arrested those responsible. Astonishing and rapid investigative work by New Scotland Yard detectives.